Nurse Chapel has a blink and you'll miss it cameo in Star Trek's 2009 movie reboot. Nurse Christine Chapel has a blink and you'll miss it cameo in the 2009 Star Trek movie. Nurse Chapel was a fixture of Dr. Leonard McCoy's, DeForest Kelley's, sickbay, often standing by to provide assistance or pine after Leonard Nimoy's Spock in 25 episodes of Star Trek, the original series. In Star Trek, the motion picture, Dr. Christine Chapel easily falls into her old role as McCoy's trusted nurse. The prequel Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, improves Nurse Chapel, Jess Bush, making her a brilliant scientist with her own character arc. Director J.J. Abrams' Kelvin Timeline Star Trek movies reimagine classic Star Trek, the original series characters for a new chapter of cinematic Star Trek. Familiar names matched with new faces. Chris Pine as Captain James T. Kirk, Zachary Quinto as Spock, Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy, and Zoe Saldana as Nyota Uhura, now with a confirmed first name. Bruce Greenwood was there as Captain Christopher Pike, at the time a deep-cut reference to the USS Enterprise's pre-Kirk captain from Star Trek's original pilot. Nurse Chapel, on the other hand, didn't seem to be part of this new iteration of Star Trek. In Star Trek 2009, Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy calls for Nurse Chapel to prepare a treatment for James T. Kirk, who's having a severe allergic reaction to the Malveron mud flea vaccine that McCoy gave Kirk. The vaccine's temporary symptoms let McCoy exploit a medical loophole that gets Cadet Kirk onto the USS Enterprise with other cadets during Starfleet's emergency mission to Vulcan. In sickbay, there are several female crew members who could be Nurse Chapel, including a woman that an ailing Kirk tries to flirt with, but none are actually confirmed to be McCoy's famous nurse. Star Trek's Kelvin timeline still sees the same USS Enterprise crew come together, even if some of them, like Kirk, have to force themselves into what the audience considers their rightful places. Commander Spock initially believes Lieutenant Nyota Uhura should be on the USS Farragut to avoid perceptions of favoritism, but Uhura confidently tells Spock in no uncertain terms that she belongs on Starfleet's flagship. He agrees. There's no reason that Nurse Christine Chapel shouldn't also be part of the USS Enterprise crew if everyone else is, and McCoy's call for Chapel confirms it. The Kelvin Timeline Star Trek movies made other references to Nurse Chapel, but she never appeared on screen. Between the events of Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, Chapel was romantically involved with Kirk and left the USS Enterprise. As a friend of Christine's, Dr. Carol Marcus, Alice Eve, brings Nurse Chapel up to Kirk during a conversation in Star Trek Into Darkness, only to find that Kirk doesn't remember Chapel. Since Nurse Chapel also decides to leave the Enterprise after a soured romantic relationship in the Prime Timeline, Chapel's Kelvin Timeline romance with Kirk and subsequent departure might be related. It's probably good that Nurse Chapel wasn't more than a drop name in the Kelvin Timeline movies. Before Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, Christine Chapel was defined by her proximity to men, from McCoy and Spock to Chapel's Star Trek, the original series fans, Dr. Roger Corby, Michael Strong. Strange New Worlds keeps Christine's relationships intact and gives Chapel agency as a multifaceted character. If Star Trek IV ever gets made with Nurse Chapel's on-screen Kelvin Timeline debut being more like Chapel's Strange New Worlds treatment, will be worth not seeing Chapel in Star Trek 2009 and J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek reboot. Many beloved characters from the original series made their way back to the screen, albeit in new, refreshed forms. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Uhura, and others became central to the narrative, anchoring a story set in an alternate timeline. However, for fans of the classic Star Trek, the original series, TOS, one fan favorite character had a blink and you'll miss it cameo, Nurse Christine Chapel. Her brief appearance in the movie went unnoticed by many, but it pays homage to a key figure in Starfleet's medical team, a character who made significant contributions to the original show. Portrayed by the legendary Majel Barrett in the original series, Nurse Chapel was part of the crew that served under Captain Kirk aboard the USS Enterprise. Chapel was a devoted, intelligent, and capable medical professional, working alongside the iconic Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy. Over time, she grew to embody a symbol of resilience and compassion, although her character was often underutilized in the stories. Despite her limited screen time in the original show, Chapel earned a place in the hearts of Star Trek fans. She was defined by her unrequited love for Spock, her duty to her crewmates, and her proficiency in the sickbay, always ensuring the crew was well cared for. However, by the time of the 2009 reboot, some of the secondary characters from TOS, like Chapel, weren't as essential to the overarching narrative. That being said, Abrams and the writers of the reboot clearly wanted to recognize some of these fan favorites. While Chapel never appeared as a major character in the film, her presence was acknowledged in a way that only the most dedicated Trekkies would have caught. The cameo, a nod to a classic character, so where exactly did Chapel appear in the 2009 Star Trek movie? During a crucial scene involving the Enterprise's crew, Nyota Uhura, played by Zoe Saldana, mentions that Nurse Chapel has been transferred to another ship. This small piece of dialogue served as a subtle Easter egg, a quiet acknowledgement of Chapel's importance in Star Trek lore. The dialogue happens quickly, and unless you're paying close attention, it's easy to miss. The mention of Chapel feels almost incidental, but in the grand scheme of the Star Trek universe, it's a respectful tip of the hat to her character. Although she doesn't physically appear on screen, this brief mention keeps her alive in the newly created Star Trek timeline. Abrams' reboot sought to strike a balance between honoring the original material and crafting something fresh for new audiences. Characters like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy were prioritized, while others, such as Nurse Chapel, were kept to the sidelines but not forgotten entirely. By referencing her transfer to another ship, the filmmakers provided a way to explain her absence while still validating her existence within the world. Why was Nurse Chapel's role reduced? One might wonder why a character like Nurse Chapel, who had been a key part of the medical team on the Enterprise and TOS, was relegated to a mere mention in the reboot. The answer lies partly in the reimagining of certain roles within the film. In the 2009 Star Trek, there was a strong focus on introducing the core characters to a new generation of fans. This meant that the primary storyline centered on Kirk, Spock, and the crew's journey toward becoming the heroes audiences knew from the original series. The film had limited space to delve into the backstories and development of supporting characters, particularly those who played more minor roles in TOS. Moreover, the reboot placed a greater emphasis on Uhura's character, positioning her as a more prominent figure, especially in her relationship with Spock. By doing so, some characters like Nurse Chapel had to be reduced to the background to give others more room to develop. In contrast, Chapel's role in TOS had been more secondary, with occasional moments of importance, but never fully developed into a lead character. The filmmakers likely made the decision to keep her involvement minimal for this reason, despite her significance to the legacy of Star Trek. The legacy of Nurse Chapel, although Chapel's cameo in the 2009 reboot was fleeting, her legacy within Star Trek remains intact. For longtime fans, this mention was a delightful Easter egg, a sign that the writers and filmmakers hadn't forgotten the contributions of characters like her. It also highlights how deep and intricate the world of Star Trek truly is, with its vast array of characters and stories. Majel Barrett's portrayal of Nurse Chapel still stands as a significant part of Star Trek history. Beyond her role as Chapel, Barrett was a critical part of the Star Trek universe, also voicing the computer for various Starfleet ships and playing the role of Lwaxana Troi in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Her contribution to the franchise cannot be overstated, and her inclusion, even in a small way, in the 2009 reboot is a testament to her lasting impact. In the end, Nurse Chapel's Blink and You'll Miss It cameo in Star Trek 2009 serves,